What's up, bromandos? Welcome back to Action Ration. I'm your host, Mike, and I'm joined today by Matt, the failed film student. How are you, brother?
I'm good. How are you?
I am fantastic. Today we're going to be reviewing a little bit of Alien Cubed, starring, of course, Sigourney Weaver, Charles S. Dutton, Charles Dance, and directed by a very young David Fincher, and we're going to be doing it while playing some Alien Isolation for your all's viewing pleasure. So, Alien Cubed, the third in the series. You want to start us off here, Matt?
Yes, you mentioned it was directed by a very young David Fincher. It was his first feature, right? And I think he had done some commercials and music videos, in particular a Madonna video. That was the one with the Metropolis set.
Oh, that Madonna's always good.
Oh yeah, express yourself.
Yeah,
I gotta. I always wonder when these studio heads hire these young, kind of inexperienced, fresh directors. Like another example would be Cuarón. I think Alfonso Cuarón. Is that how you say his name? But he did that low budget road movie, road trip sex movie. From that he jumped to the third Harry Potter movie. So Fox did the same thing here where, Fox had done that with Fincher after like Rennie Harlan and then Vincent Ward both dropped out. I kind of wonder what their motivation is. Is it so they could have basically like a director they could control?
I've never understood this because I feel like studios are still doing this today. Probably a good example would be whatever happened to the Fantastic Four, the Fantastic flop film that came out where the director was basically, I think he was the director of Chronicle, and so it was like this low budget movie that kind of blew people away, and they hire him for his vision, and then they just kind of fight him every step of the way until he kind of just implodes on himself and ruins the movie.
Yeah, well, that's what they say. They hired him because of his vision, but then same thing happened with Fincher. The studio fought him every step of the way. But yeah, I got to give him some credit though. I mean, he has a good vision. It's even apparent in Alien Cube that he knows how to set a tone and establish a mood. Just too bad it is a crap plot and a story, and he basically had no script when they started shooting. So.
Yeah, scripts are kind of an important thing to have, and yes. He really didn't. They hired him, I believe it was 5 weeks before the production. Script was not finished. Sets were still being built, and they said, build your story around this non-existent script.
Yeah.
So the movie opens up, and just so viewers understand, we're going to be discussing the assembly cut, the very long, almost 2.5 hour version of Alien Cubed that came out a couple years after the theatrical edition, which was actually less than 2 hours. So you got about 20-30 more minutes of movie in this particular cut, but to set the record straight,
and
you want to say something?
Which, by the way, Fincher had it's not a director's cut because Fincher had nothing to do with this cut. I believe that the guy who did the assembly cut was working off of some production notes of Fincher's. That's what he said. But anyway, so it was somebody totally different than Fincher. He had nothing to do with it.
Which is kind of weird we even got it at all. But the assembly cut opens up with kind of a montage of images that kind of sort of fade in and out. And I would say probably my favorite shot in the movie is in the opening 5 seconds. It shows the basically finger-like tendons of a facehugger sort of spreading out kind of in front of the camera. And it just looks really cool. But it basically gives the entire twist of the movie away. And if you all are watching this, spoilers, this is going to be a very in-depth review.
Yes.
Ripley is infected with an alien. And it gives it away, like right in the very beginning.
Yeah, I love that cross-dissolve dip to black editing. So it's kind of like that whole can't solve it, dissolve it.
Yes, I think I remember that one.
But my question is, how the hell did the egg get on the Sulico? I know it's been debated, and there are like some fan theories floating around out there, but so it hatches. the facehugger attaches to Ripley in cryo sleep because later on they show inside the crashed ship the acid burn in the cryo chamber. And it impregnates her, then takes almost 2 weeks to come out of her. Which, by the way, like this is not shown in the assembly cut. The theatrical release had the alien bursting out of her chest when she threw herself into the fire pit. Yeah, and it confirmed for the viewer who hadn't figured it out 20 seconds in that she was impregnated. But anyway, more on that later. But back to the whole egg thing, it doesn't really make any sense because the queen in Aliens was killed. She got ejected from the cargo hold again. The egg sac it was attached to got destroyed. All the eggs got destroyed. And then why? How did it get there? And then why did it take so long? In the first two movies, it's established that it takes hours, right?
Yes, it's in the first movie. I mean, from what we know, let's take the very first one where I forget his name. John Hurt's character. Mm-hmm. He gets. I mean, the facehugger attaches to him. It's on his face for a couple hours. It disappears. He wakes up, and literally, the very next scene is it's bursting out of his chest at the breakfast scene. So it's that's only maybe half a day, 12 hours, 16.
Yeah.
And every other movie gives that impression too. I mean, the AVP series sort of takes a little bit of liberties with it only taking 5 seconds, 5 minutes, but
fuck those movies.
yeah, exactly. This movie, I mean, it's it's just in her for at least a week and a half.
Yeah, I got the sense that this took place over a couple of weeks. But then how did it impregnate her and also the cow? Or the dog, whichever version you watch. But again, the first two movies showed that the facehugger dies after impregnating the host, right?
That's correct, yeah. Facehugger dies after impregnating the host, and then the host is screwed. But yeah it's how many eggs got aboard their ship? I mean, we see the acid blood, which... Again, did it just spit that?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense. It breaks the rules of that the series is already set up for itself.
Mm-hmm.
Which is always a great way to start.
Oh yeah. Let's break the rules.
Yeah, let's break the rules, piss off the fans. I like how you mentioned the cow or dog alien, which I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about. In my notes here, I have Alien 3 creature designed by H.R. Geiger.
Yeah, Geiger was asked to redesign the creatures, and I think so he did some concept art, and I wasn't able to confirm this, but I read that he had also actually built a life-size model of it, on his own. But his initial design was a cat type alien, which I guess they sort of kept that concept and made it an alien dog cow hybrid that ran on all fours, which looked really goofy. But
yes.
One of his other things was giving the alien lips. He had lips, but I think his reasoning was that he wanted it to be even more sensual. And keep in mind that when he was brought on, he was working off of Vincent Ward's concept with this wooden planet and these exiled religious zealots, these monks. But Geiger had envisioned it kissing one of the monks, and it had the spear tongue instead of a second little head, and it would go into their head and eat out their brain. So, but yeah, I think he ended up suing Fox because he was wrongly credited. But what I believe happened was that he did some concept art, and then Studio ADI, Amalgamated Dynamics, which was, I think, one or two guys that had originally worked with Stan Winston, but they took his concept art and redesigned it. And they ended up doing, pretty much all the designs in the work anyway. So yeah, understandably, he was pissed off. because they screwed him over.
Yeah, I mean, well, when I think of a cat alien and I think of it with lips, all I can picture is H.R. Giger in his quiet, dark house in Switzerland, I believe, holding his cat while he's like holding the paintbrush in the other hand, going, "Yeah, you're going to be in this movie too, little whatever he called his cat. I'm going to give you lips so you can learn how to kiss the human." It's like, God, what a weird dude. Yeah. We've talked about that before.
Yes, go check out our other 2 videos.
Yes.
For more in-depth discussion of Geiger.
Yeah.
Geiger. We still can't say his name right, but damn it.
Hans Rudy.
Giger.
I keep skulls to remind myself of death. Like, what the... Yeah, that was the first review we talked about.
Weird
here,
dude.
so.
Yeah.
He's holding a human skull. He's holding an actual skull. And he's got like 3 other next to him, and he's like, "This is the first skull I owned from my childhood. I was afraid of death, so I attach it to a string and I carry it behind me as I go to school." You could go check that one out.
Yeah, go check out our first review. Oh, but speaking of Fox getting sued, Michael Biehn also threatened to sue because
he did.
Yeah, and so he ends up. We'll probably come back to this again later on, but he gets killed right away. It was some ship wreckage that impaled him, but originally he had found out that it was supposed to be an alien that burst out of Hicks' chest, and that was supposed to be how he died. So he got pissed and threatened to sue, so they paid him to like use a picture of him.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was his whole part, a picture, and then a sculpted like a dummy that so he wasn't even in the movie at all, only his likeness, but he got paid. So
yeah, and I realized that David Fincher came on quite late, but just looking at the production as a whole, I just gotta say that I am definitely in the camp that I don't care if Carrie Henn was a bit older at this time. The idea to kill off Hicks and Newt after all they went through in Aliens just really rubbed me the wrong way. Just to give some context for this review, I went in knowing that I do not like Alien 3, and I'm pretty sure you were kind of in the same bag. Maybe you're like, yeah, interesting ideas, but you don't like it either.
No, well, again, you can go back and check our Aliens review. I pretty much hated Aliens, the second one, and this one I wanted to like it, I just couldn't. It's bad, but yeah, we'll come back to that whole story part of it, but that, don't you think that opening sequence was kind of boring though?
Yes, yeah, I was just about to mention that. So they show the ship crashing, and it's not like an interesting crash. It's just like sort of the ship just kind of goes through the atmosphere and then falls into the water. And very boring in my opinion. Like I said, maybe it's just hard for me to judge a movie I know I don't like fairly, but it's just, again, the ship crashes in the distance and the picture just fades out, dissolved to black, and maybe it would have been better just to start with showing what the planet looks like and have Ripley's ship just sort of crash stupendously into the surface like it's this calm junkyard, and then boom, just crash, and and then we find out that it is her ship, and maybe they should have hired me.
Yeah, I kind of understand if the idea, maybe this was Fincher's thing, he wanted to create more of a claustrophobic, isolated kind of feel, but do we ever really get a sense of any kind of the scope of things? Like, where does this take place? I don't really think so, but the editing is all over the place. I think in going back to Vincent Ward's draft, it was a monk that was looking out at the stars, and then he sees that one's moving, and it's the Sulaco, and it crashes on the planet. But man, it just sounds like they had no idea what they wanted to do. They like smashed a bunch of ideas together because the studio had already set a release date. Now, I really, I think that was what it was, because I think originally it was supposed to take place on Earth. That was Rennie Harlin's idea, that Ripley, Hicks, and Newt return to Earth. But then in an earlier version, Ripley was like basically written out of it altogether. They had her in a coma or in cryostasis during the whole thing. And then in yet another version, everybody died in the beginning, including Ripley. So sounds like they just kind of picked all these different ideas and tried to make something work out of it.
They kind of just squashed the several versions of the script together like Play-Doh, which it's interesting that like the final credit is given to the written by credit is given to Walter Hill and David Giler, and was produced by them. So they sort, they came back from the first movie, and but this time we didn't have Ridley Scott, we didn't have O'Bannon, we didn't have Shusett, and I just think it's interesting that all these ideas came together and the final credit was given to them, because I remember them saying like the original O'Bannon Shusett script for Alien sucked.
Yeah, I think they did, and then didn't they also give a story credit to Ward?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and I also heard that they actually did approach Ridley Scott, and then he, well, according to Sigourney Weaver, she made this claim that he was interested, but then ultimately walked away because Fox was also developing an AVP, and he thought the whole thing was just cheaping. But yeah, and then it's interesting too that Giler said he originally wasn't interested in doing another Alien movie, but he did anyway, I guess because of money. Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. So, anyways, so the ship crashes, and we see the alien probably infecting Sigourney Weaver, and on this prison planet, Fury 161, Charles Dance walks out of the fog and looks over the sea in an early Game of Thrones cameo. And he, in turn, finds the naked body of Ripley covered in maggots, and these maggots nice thing is this nice touch that never really amounts to anything in the film.
Yeah, I actually think that's cool, some nice imagery, but I think that's all it is really, because they never really, I think there's like maybe one more shot later on in the movie where they kind of go in close on these little light or fleas or something or whatever it is, but yeah.
We talked about that before this review, so we'll go a little bit more into the production design in a little bit. But my thing was, I'm like, how did she get on the beach? So in the theatrical edition, they actually film the prisoners of this planet finding her inside the crashed ship. And in this one, she just crashes into the sea, and then her body just sort of washes up on the beach.
Yeah, I don't know. It just, yeah, I don't know. That's a real head scratcher.
Yeah. And then the next shot we get are these condemned prisoners to this planet just sort of run out of the beach covered in hoods like a witch's coven and clean Ripley up, and then the movie just sort of shoehorns in right there that Newton Hicks died. And like I said, that is honestly the last way I wanted this movie to begin after all they went through in Aliens.
Yeah, but I mean, that actually it works for the direction the story went in. I get that they wanted Ripley again, and they had to isolate her. But like you said earlier, that the actress that played Newt, Carrie Henn, had aged, and I think she had basically stopped acting. But they could have hired her anyway. And I think she did say that she was under the impression that she would return to do another Alien movie. In a recent interview, I think this was last year, but she said she would have done it. But in any case, it didn't even need to be the same actress. If that was the issue, they could have found a teenager, had it take place further in the future, I don't know. There was all kind of ways for it to go. But for fuck's sake, man, don't use that nihilism thing. The movie it's effective at saying that life sucks, it's brutal, universe, Ripley's fucked, but it just is a betrayal kind of to me.
Yeah.
And on a story level, it doesn't work because, you know, you can say what you want to about Hen's performance, whether or not the character was really all that well developed, or if it was better or worse to take it in that direction. I mean, that's a whole separate argument. But from Aliens, the viewer got heavily invested in that story and in those characters because that is their story. And it especially doesn't work when you consider it's a direct sequel. And the whole theme of the movie of Aliens is motherhood and family. The queen alien was a mother. So, and that was set up at the beginning of the movie, if you watch the director's cut of Aliens, that Ripley was a mother and that she lost her daughter. And then by the end of the movie, she has a new daughter and kind of this like makeshift family. And that has a resolution. But nah, they had to, wipe that all out because I don't know, for whatever reason. I guess they wanted to be, isolate Ripley and have her be the hero again.
Yeah. Like
you can't have an alien movie without Ripley.
I think we're about to dive a little bit into the Marianas Trench of Alien Cubed. There's definitely the overall movie, of course, is very bleak. It's very, very nihilistic in some ways, existentialistic, if that's even the right way to say those words. But it's just chock also full of religious symbolism. The opening line of the whole film is, "Jesus Christ!" One of the guys yells. I don't think that's probably not intentional, but you're just immediately struck by all this religious symbolism. Like, you got the sun going down on the planet with a piece of like a broken building that looks like a cross. And then you're cut to the circle of these prisoners, these men on this planet. They get together and they have this weird sort of prayer that ends with them saluting themselves in the Praetorial Roman sense. And you're just like, it's just the beginning of just way too much freaking religious symbolism in this movie.
Yeah, and also monks in space is kind of stupid. Oh, and the Jesus theme will come into play later on in the movie, creating a nice little bookend.
It most certainly will. The very ending, almost ending shot. Yeah, so speaking of monks in space being kind of stupid, so like some of the original scripts, they had this idea, I think it was maybe Vincent Ward's script, it had the idea of monks being on this wooden planet in space, but by the point of this movie getting made, that had evolved into a prison planet called Fury 161 with these prisoners, and it just doesn't work at all.
Yeah, that was David Twohy. He had come back and wrote yet another version, and he changed it to a prison planet. And he didn't get credit at all, I don't think.
I don't think so. Oh, however, he would go into the future and he would resurrect the idea of a prison planet later on in the future when he made the Chronicles of Riddick. But anyways, so these prisoner monks who are religious, all of them are super freaked out about there being a woman amongst them because their spiritual unity, is just, they're so anxious about it that they have a rescue team called out ASAP. And this is where we get this motif of like it being a planet of rabid rapists. Like, they're so weird about it, and the movie harps on it so much. It seriously, it mentions them being afraid of like someone raping Ripley like 60 times in this movie.
I guess if they were monks, maybe, but as prisoners, I don't know, man.
Exactly. Yeah, if they were monks, it would have been plausible, but I also have written here that the only likable person on this planet is Charles Dance. His character, who also kind of hints that they're all rapists and none of them have seen a woman in like 25 years, and there's years, and there's like only 25 of them left, and they're just sort of keeping the pilot line on at this toxic waste containment colony for Weyland-Yutani.
Yeah, but why? Why would they stay of their own free will? I mean, I haven't read the novelization, but did hear that, from what I understand, it explained that part of the story better. That Wayland Yutani intended to reopen it at some point, that it was an abandoned mining facility, and that the prisoners were there serving their sentences. So
yeah, it's like, is it free will or were they forced to stay there? Like, Dance talks about this a little bit later when he sort of explains that there's sort of these pseudo-fundamentalist Christian prisoner rapists looking whatever. So this is, yeah,
I think it kind of like alluded to both, but really couldn't make up his mind about it,
Again,
like they're prisoners, but they're religious zealots, so it's a little bit of both, but not really. So
yeah, again, monks in space is kind of stupid.
Yeah.
So they call an emergency rescue shuttle from Wayland Yutani to get this woman away from them, and we're given a time-sensitive plot device, 1 week. That's the deadline.
Yeah, and hey, didn't that become the plot of Aliens? That there were only like 5 hours till the planet exploded or something? Didn't we debate that point?
Yeah.
But now I gotta create that tension where there is none, I guess.
Yep. Yeah. If in 5 hours the whole planet will explode, we got problems.
Oh, yeah.
So, Clemens, who is Dance's character, he shows Ripley the downed ship, which I guess they recovered from the ocean, and he tells her of the others. Yeah, somehow. He tells her of the other's demise, and Ripley sees the alien blood burned through one of the cryotubes and becomes worried. And
how?
This is where... Right, it's like...
Again, how did does the facehugger spit it? Or were there 2 of them? One of them killed the other one? I don't... Oh, well. But anyway, back to...
Something fell on it.
Uh-huh.
And here, this is where they start trying to hint that Newt might have the alien inside her body since she died by drowning and not sudden impact like Hicks. But, again, the alien blood burn is on Ripley's tube. Or at least she would recognize that as her tube. So... yeah, it's just the whole timeline about aliens incubating and bursting out of their chests is just really thrown off by this movie.
Yeah, and that's my earlier question, is why did it take so long? Is it, again, to create some kind of tension, or kind of like build this mystery out of it to keep kind of things moving forward? But I think it's known fairly early that Ripley is carrying it, but that it had to kind of wait until the plot demanded it. So,
well, there was just so many.
Yeah.
I was just say there's just so many missed opportunities, because the next scene is she has her and Dance. They inspect the body of Newt, and she weirds all the prisoners out by asking for an autopsy, which they're like, we know she drowned, why give an autopsy? So, she's all like, oh, there might be a cholera outbreak. And they're like, that's preposterous. We haven't seen that in, centuries. But, yeah, why not? So they cut open Newt, and they just, of course, there isn't any alien inside. So they could have had this long-standing plot device where none of the prisoners wanted to do an autopsy on Newt for maybe some religious reason, and Ripley really wanted to because she was afraid the alien was going to burst out, and you had this interesting tension going on. But no, instead they eliminate the possibility of the alien being inside Newt, but we know it infected somebody, and that leaves only Ripley.
Yeah.
Yeah. This planet is really weird. Like, the production design is amazing, but it kind of reminds me of something more out of Hellraiser 2 than it does an Alien movie.
Yeah.
Just kind of like a dark basement that, where you just expect Pinhead to come walking out of the walls.
Yeah, and I don't know why they decided that was the direction to go backwards, back to the first Alien, with the kind of isolated, single alien threat again. Yeah, I don't understand that, but yeah, Charles Dance, I like this character up to a point.
Me too. He's kind of like, he's pretty much the best thing next, in the movie next to Ripley, and Actually, I probably like him better than Ripley just based on some of the decisions she makes in this movie.
Yeah, but we'll come back to Clemens later, but Ripley sucks in this movie.
Yeah, it's not her. It's definitely not her best.
Especially with the whole rape thing.
Yeah, like 100 times. And again, it might just be like the eerie industrial maze of this place filled with rotting metal and bugs and blood and low lighting and just the machinery pumping in the background. And not to mention the constant mentions of rape. But this movie just reminds me a lot of Hellraiser 2.
Yeah, I mean, they were all rapists and child molesters that were part of some weird, like, cult thing that forbade sexual relations, so, you know, it's only natural for them to all want to rape her. I think that, to me, is like Rennie Harlan said, with it being, like, the same kind of environment, that it really just a rehash of what had been done before with the whole prison planet. I thought it might be cool to see either the alien homeworld or Ripley, Hicks, and Newts returning to Earth.
Yeah.
You know, maybe there's an alien outbreak there, but I don't know. It just seemed like we couldn't have that. We had to go back to the whole single alien threat until, you know, Prometheus sort of attempted to explore the origins, which is a whole other thing. But it's interesting that you mentioned Hellraiser, because Clyde Barker said that he was actually approached by Giler to direct Alien 3 at one point. And then Barker said that he wanted more than one alien, and that he wanted something like more terrible and threatening, because, you know, the whole concept of the alien wasn't very interesting to him. He described him as like just insect-like murderers. So it was more like the behavior and motivation, not the design. Yeah, I just wonder if there were any of those ideas that they discussed that carried over.
Alien Q to Alien Nightbreed. Yeah. We cut to these two prisoners, and they're beginning to burn a cow while they talk about, again, raping Ripley.
Yeah, I think the theme of this movie is rape. Maybe gender identity, because it seemed to strip Ripley of whatever femininity she had.
Yeah, you see that these two guys who are kind of just joking and talking about all these horrible things, they find an alien facehugger, and they just don't even seem to think it's worth mentioning. Like, they just sort of lift it up and they go, "Yeah, what's that? I'll add it to the night stew." And you're just like, what?
Yeah, it's just not a big deal at all. What's this weird fucking scary looking thing we've never seen before? No question, where did it come from? Oh well, toss it in the stew. But it's obvious that it's different in appearance than the facehuggers from the previous movies, but as far as I could tell, it isn't explored beyond that. The whole thing just disappears.
It's like, it apparently it would be a facehugger for a queen alien, but yeah, it's just, you get one little shot of it and you notice that it looks particularly bigger than other facehuggers, and then, you know, no big deal, just, you know, some giant alien spider, throw it in the stew, more protein.
I don't know if that's just confused writing or just lazy writing. Like, that doesn't need to be a thing.
Yeah.
Which makes these guys morons, too.
Yeah, not only monks, not only fundamentalists and rapists and prisoners, but now they're just morons as well. Yeah. Speaking of the religious stuff again, so we go to the industrial melting pits on this Fury 161 planet, where we will eventually get the Terminator 2 ending later. And we just get the weirdest, creepiest, most opaquest cremation funeral ever, with the guy giving the religious speech and ashes to ashes and dust to dust, and at that point the alien comes out of the dead cow. Kablam!
Yeah, man, but didn't you see the symbolism there, though? It's death and rebirth, and they're throwing the bodies of Hicks and Newt at the same time as the alien is bursting out of the cow. It's the circle of life, but...
It's, you know... I get it, but it's just covered in the most half-baked weirdness I've ever seen. Like, I mean, it just kind of really just takes away the creepiness of a new cow alien coming onto the scene. And again, we end with the pseudo-Roman and Nazi salute, amen. Like, it's just, like, what? What were they thinking? Like, why?
Yeah, I mean, that whole cult thing should have just been scratched. Because I don't know if there actually was any symbolism. I mean, was it like an allegory or something? I know that there's this other theory out there that it's supposed to be like an allegory of the AIDS epidemic, but I have no idea how. To me, it's just there is no symbolism or subtext. And it's just 18 different people tossed a bunch of ideas and hey, we found one that stuck. You know, it shows us a cow alien, like you mentioned that. I like that better visually, but I think the dog works better functionally. It suggests that this movie, again, breaking, I mean, I guess this was never really established but as a rule, but it does break its own rules. But it suggests that the alien shares genetic info with its host, and it was supposed to be like a part alien or dog or cow, part dog, cow. You know, we'll come back to it another time, but this is also carried over into Resurrection. Seems like a neat concept, I guess, but again, it does seem to like go against the rules established in the first two movies. And I suppose it's only implied, but the face hugger in the first two movies, it uses its host to give birth. Like, you know how some kind of some insects lay eggs in a host and then the larvae eat their way out.
Yeah.
But then if you watch the assembly cut, that also creates like a gap or a hole, because we see later on the one bald dude in the wind tunnel calling out for the dog. And I was like, well, had I not seen the theatrical cut, I would have wondered who the fuck is he looking for. It was the dog, so.
Yeah. Yeah, the movie tells us, at least the assembly cut tells us, that this is a cow alien, which doesn't really work because the cow is already dead. So, I mean, I believe that the alien has to come out of a live host. And again, how did an alien get inside a cow?
Yeah, and that,
like, how did it get there?
Exactly, it brings up that whole question. How did it get there? Were there two? Was it?
It's like I mean the alien itself looks and kind of acts more like a dog, and I believe in the theatrical cut you had a dog running around named Spike, and then all the one Spike is of course completely annihilated when the alien that's as big as him comes out, kind of something like out of The Thing. Yeah,
which is a brutal scene. I like that. I like the dog version better.
Me too. It just makes more sense. And you know, I guess I'll say this so we can move on. So, I mean, this movie, I don't like this movie at all, but just adding the idea that the alien kind of adapts to the, whatever it is, genetics of its host, does add to the mythos, so that's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, I'll give it a pass for that, but yeah.